Hi guys, right, part 3 of how to be awesome. I thought we'd do it this way for a change today. I'll just see if I can multitask. I'm going to read it in the book and try and change it on the screen behind me so that you can see it. So we got as far as saying hello to growth mindset, which is what we're about to do. So here we go. Check your mindset. Here are some common attitudes that can help you figure out if you are in a growth or fixed mindset. You might not sit easily in one mindset or another. You might be in a growth mindset about some things and a fixed mindset about others. But thinking about your mindset will bring you one step closer to better understanding your personality and how to achieve your awesome. Which of these sounds most like you? So we're coming across this arrow here, look. Fixed mindset. Ability. Ability is fixed and predetermined from birth. People are born with certain gifts, talents, or skills. Is that what you believe? If you have a look at the growth mindset underneath, this is the comparison. Look, I'm going to read the ability one over there. Ability can be changed with practice. Talents, gifts, and skills can be developed. Effort. What's the point in trying? My abilities were given to me at birth and I can't change them. Or how about, it makes sense to have a go at anything. Putting effort in is the only way to get better at stuff. Mistakes. Let's not admit we make them. Let's carry on exactly as before, and let's definitely not ask anyone for help. Super talented people don't need any help. Or how about, mistakes happen. They're nothing to be ashamed of, and they show me exactly what I don't know so that I can work on improving my skills. Feedback. I don't need it. It makes me uncomfortable, so I usually just ignore it. Or I appreciate feedback. Unless I know where I'm going wrong, I'll never be able to improve. That's a really good one if you can do that. It's not easy because you want people to tell you you've done a really good job. Even grown-ups struggle with that. But actually, if you can start thinking that you can learn from it, it's actually really positive. Challenges. I don't like challenges and usually avoid them at all costs. I don't want to look stupid. So what happens if I try something and get it wrong? What if I lose? I'm better off just not taking part at all. Or I welcome a challenge, bring it on. Trying new things is the only way to learn. I don't mind if I don't get it right first time. That's fine. I'll get it next time or the time after that. And remember what we tell you at school, that actually, if you're getting everything right every time, we've probably made the work too easy. You're not supposed to be able to do that. That is not where the learning happens. Other people's successes. I get jealous of other people's achievements, and I also get a bit defensive as I assume I'm not as good as them. Easy to feel like that. But how about, I always try to find out how others achieved their goals. What did they do? How can I do the same as them to achieve success? Great idea. And the result, kid average, here he is. Maybe I'll dig a hole to Australia from suburban Reading for the rest of my life. Possibly not going to be very successful. Kid awesome. Look out world, I'm coming and I'm going to work as hard as I can to be the best me I can be. Okay, next page. So, what is growth mindset and can I buy it online? Do you remember this was in assembly? We talked about that. The bad news is you can't order a growth mindset online to be delivered with an order of garlic bread on the side. The good news is you can train yourself to have one. A growth mindset is the belief that your ability is not fixed. You are not handed out a fixed pot of brilliance at birth. That might only be half full in some cases. Instead, you can grow and change your ability with practice, with determination and effort. Once you believe that opportunity, remember that table in my garage, and dedicated practice, remember I wanted to smash my brother, are the foundations of getting good. Well, it makes sense to have a go. After all, these are the things I can control. Fixed mindset versus growth mindset. If you're in a fixed mindset but keen to be in a growth mindset, check out how to overcome some common doubts that might otherwise hold you back. Growth mindset is based on the belief that your basic qualities are things you can cultivate through your efforts. And remember, we looked at some of these in assembly. Instead of having a fixed mindset and thinking I'm no good at that, try I'm no good at that yet, but I can be much better if I try. Okay, let's get a bit real, but only a tiny bit. Growth mindset is a big deal, massive, potentially world-changing. Will it stop global warming? Could it cure cancer? Well, yes, it might, if the scientists working on global warming or cancer are in a growth mindset and don't give up until they find a solution. What we do know for sure, though, is that you definitely won't reach your potential if you don't even try. And even if you're not the Olympic champion at the end of all of this, I wasn't. It turns out most of the population of China also had a table tennis table in their garage and hadn't wasted quite as much time as I had on the whole to Australia. You'll be far, far better than when you started. You will be the best you can possibly be. You'll probably be more confident, more willing to try new things, and less frightened to look stupid. And who wouldn't want that? So, I think we're ready. No, not for the story about the bus to Bergen, Germany, not Bergen, Norway. There are 1,268 kilometres apart, according to Google and Interpol, who'd come looking for me, but more on this later. I think we're ready for the next phase of our awesome mission, stage 2. Let's get on with it. How do we actually get a growth mindset and change those fixed mindset voices we hear about in our heads? Over to you, the worry jar. What are the things you tend to worry about which might stop you from trying something new or hard? Can you write them down on some slips of paper? Then put the slips in a worry jar. Any jar or pot will do. In a week's time, or even 2 weeks, look at the slips of paper again, maybe with your mum or dad or friends, and see whether those worries still apply. Throw away any that don't. Then take a look at the ones that are still worrying you. Is there someone you can talk to about these? Your fantastic, elastic and plastic brain. Chapter 3. Some weird facts about your brain. One weird fact is that I can't ever actually type the word brain without making a mistake. I type Brian and have to correct it every single time. And who's Brian anyway? Do you know what? I can't type children, which is really annoying because I write about children every single day. But back to the point. Your brain is more than 70% water. Being dehydrated affects your concentration and memory. That's why we ask you to keep drinking at school. I hope you're managing to remember to do that at home as well. Your brain has about 10 billion neurons. There are around 100,000 miles of blood vessels in the brain. If you untangled them all, they'd stretch nearly halfway to the moon. The average person has about 60,000 thoughts every day. The brain produces enough electricity to power a small light bulb. No, I can't say this. I have to use my phonics. Sphenopalatine ganglion neuralgia is the scientific term for brain freeze. Try saying that with an ice cream headache. Crikey, that was a tricky one. But these facts are not even the most interesting things about the brain. There is something even more amazing, staggering, and, dare I say it, world-changing. This is relatively recent news, even for the neuroscientists out there. Perhaps one of them is called Brian. So we really are at the cutting edge of science here. The fact is, you can actually train your brain. Look at him with his running shoes on. Sort of, take it to the gym if you like, make it stronger and grow its capacity for learning new things. Getting in shape usually means one thing, right? Physical fitness. The body really is an incredible thing. We can train it to be super flexible or built for endurance sports like marathons. Physically, our bodies are fully adaptable, but it's also possible to customize your brain and get it in good shape. Unfortunately, that doesn't involve spending hours in the gym. Your marvellous brain. Day after day, our brains are hard at work. They are mission control for every move we make, from blinking and breathing to walking and talking. Your brain might power down a bit at night, but even in sleep mode, it is processing information and making sense of it. But the brain is also a complex communication centre. It's made up of billions of pathways that deliver signals to our central nervous system, which controls all activities in the body. These are called neural signals. Their job is to fire up every time we think, feel, or do something. Some pathways are more active with signals than others. There are pathways in charge of basic functions that keep us alive, of course, but lots more are formed because we choose to do certain things. From playing the guitar to learning lines for a school play, neural pathways take shape to deliver the signals we need to get that particular job done. This means we can shape up our brain just like we can shape up our body. Think of it as a mental muscle. If we put the brain through a fitness program that helps to build neural pathways, we can mold into something truly incredible. And the more we push ourselves, the more connections we make and the stronger they become. Scientists have a name for this. Wait for it. It's called neuroplasticity. Great word. Come on. There we go. Get connected. As well as being a table tennis player, I'm a writer and journalist. I've been doing it for a long time. When I started writing, my table tennis pathways were still very active. My chop loop shot across the table was pretty awesome. My 1,200 word article on the local football match, not so much. But over time, I've developed my writing skills. My brain, darn it, again, says Brian, has adapted. I write better and faster. I find the best words quicker and put them together more effectively. The more I have practiced writing, the more connections I've grown to make me better at it. Sadly, though, my killer spine serve is not what it used to be. Practice, practice, practice. But that's the thing with these pesky little neural connections. You have to use them or you lose them. They're fickle little things. They don't hang around if you're not paying them any attention. The more you practice, the more they grow. If you stop practicing, they're gone. Off. Sayonara. Au revoir. Start from scratchville. Think of taking a walk in a forest that no one has ever travelled through before. The first time you try, it'll be pretty tricky. You probably won't leave much of a trail behind you, and the plants will grow back quickly in your wake. But if you keep walking the same route day in, day out, then eventually you'll create a path, making it easier to walk through the forest next time. Neural connections are the same. So the more you practice maths questions or skateboarding tricks or level 53 of Minecraft, the stronger the connections become. It makes it easier the next time you try. Continuous effort, not strength or intelligence, is the key to unlocking our potential. And continuous effort, of course, is the one thing that every single one of you can do. You're probably thinking, what on earth has all this got to do with mindset? You thought you were getting a growth mindset, and instead you're now thinking about a weightlifting regime for the jelly-like stuff in your skull. But surely this ability for the brain to physically change and create new connections is the very reason that having a growth mindset really works. It's proof that your ability isn't fixed at birth. If your brain actually grows when you practice, making things easier to achieve the next time, then it makes a whole lot of sense to start practicing things. Now, your brain isn't actually made from plastic, but it does share the same ability to be moulded and shaped. While you can't flatten it out or sculpt it into a model of the Eiffel Tower, just for example, we can reset the pathways inside it to help us become awesome at something we really want to be good at. If you need proof, then follow me as we jump inside the back of a taxi and stare at the driver's head. Why? Because something pretty awesome is happening in there. The human sat-nav. London's black taxi cabs are famous all around the world. When you ask to be taken to an address on the other side of the capital, the driver will take you the most efficient route there without getting lost or going in the wrong direction up a one-way street. How can they do this without looking at the map or sat-nav? Because in order to earn your licence to drive a black cab, you need to pass an exam called the Knowledge. A black cab driver is expected to know about 25,000 streets in London and thousands of landmarks. He or she also has to be able to drive there from any point in the capital without making a single mistake. In the Knowledge exam, taxi drivers are asked to describe the routes they take between any places that the examiner might dream up. It's a huge mental undertaking and requires several years of study before candidates are ready to take the exam. They put in tons of practice, which many hopefuls do by zipping around the streets on a scooter. Amazingly, brain scans have shown that those who master the massive tangle of roads usually experience structural changes in their brains. They possess more grey matter, which is where mental processing takes place, compared to when they first set out on the streets. As they begin to make sense of the way the capital is connected, their brains build up new neural pathways to deal with the information required. So, if you ever find yourself in a black cab, just think that the driver behind the wheel has worked hard at building his or her super brain. Your brain has been specially designed to manage skills involving memory and visual processing. Your cabbie might not look exceptional, but watch them thread through the streets and you'll realise you're in the presence of a human sat-nav. That's an awesome feat of memory that takes masses of practice. It also goes to show just how adaptable the brain can be when it comes to helping you stand out from the crowd. Taxi drivers versus bus drivers, the mind match. In a similar piece of research, bus drivers were put under the spotlight with a brain scan. Now, these men and women have to learn a lot of streets too, but not as many as taxi drivers, and that's the crucial difference. After all, bus drivers follow the same set routes and they don't need to know every single part of the spaghetti bolognese tangle of roads, streets, avenues and cul-de-sacs that go into making up London. So, bus driver scans show their brains had changed too. But here's the interesting bit. Their brains hadn't changed as much as the taxi driver's brains had. Why? Because it just isn't as tricky to be a bus driver. You don't need to learn so many street names. The practice isn't quite as challenging, so the bus drivers didn't need to build as many neural pathways in their brains as taxi drivers. The moral of this story is, the more challenging the practice, the more neural connections you make. Keep practicing. Don't put down your maths homework early if you want to be good at it. If you do, those connections might start disappearing faster than your Uncle Peter's hair. You want your brilliant practice to mean something, and this is another reason for carrying on with your home learning while schools are shut, right? But you don't have to start from scratch. When it comes to shaping your brain to become awesome at stuff, just remember you've already begun. Over to you. Your worst case scenario. Making everyday tasks harder is a great way of training your brain. Don't be afraid to be curious, try new things, and never allow mistakes to put you off. Mistakes can actually help to grow your brain. So, can you think of ways to make your skate practice or your maths homework or your dance rehearsal just that little bit trickier to push you further? Oh, great question. Right, practice makes awesome. Look, I like that. Not practice makes perfect. Chapter 4. Now, here's an interesting thing. As human beings, we are becoming better at stuff all the time. In every area of endeavour, from sport to science, we are building on experience, raising our standards and using our brains to drive these achievements. At the 1900 Olympics, the winner of the men's 100 metres took the title in 11 seconds. Today, thanks to the power of practice, that time is regularly beaten by under 15s at national school championships. Way back in the 13th century, an English scholar called Roger Bacon argued it was impossible to master maths in less than 40 years. Today, we consider the kind of calculations he was talking about to be basic stuff that we learn at school. So, we humans are better than ever, all thanks to the brain's neuroplasticity. But you still have to practice if you want to be the best you can be. And as it turns out, you're already awesome at lots of things. We asked you to think about this in assembly, remember? Right, getting good at stuff without trying. Now, so it says, let's do a reading test. So, you're not going to be able to do this, but it says, what does this say? I don't know if you can read it from there. And then what does this say? Okay. Both strings of letters have the same 49 characters, but the first one is total gobbledygook, utterly meaningless. The second, however, makes sense to you. You understand it. Why? Because you have developed a highly complex skill. Your pattern recognition with words in the English language, as otherwise known as reading, is top-notch. Now, imagine a tiny baby. Do you think it would see any difference between the two strings of letters? No, not at all, not a chance. None of us arrive at the world being able to recognise the alphabet, so both sets of letters look like total nonsense to a newborn. Without realising it, you've probably spent hundreds of hours practising reading. It's a hugely complex skill, and I suspect you've never given it much thought. But doesn't it make you think, if you can master this reading business with practice, why can't you master that violin piece you've been putting off learning, or nail that science topic that you think is way beyond you? The truth is, there's absolutely no reason why. Here is some more really complex things that you've practiced loads without really noticing. Number 1, the ability to recognise your best friend in a crowd. Recognising people we know is a super tricky thing to do. Think about it. Almost everyone has the exact same features, 2 eyes, 2 ears and a nose. But tiny differences in appearance become really obvious when you've spent a lot of time looking at other people. With all that practice we've had, we've unconsciously become really good at facial recognition. Imagine you're trying to pick out a particular rat from a lineup of 40 rats. Not a chance you'd pick out the same rat twice, right? They all look the same, ugly things with their hairy tails and pointy noses. But put 40 kids in a row and you'll pick out your best friend every single time. Let's face it, it'd be friendship ending if you didn't. Number 2, rock, paper, scissors. We've done human rock, paper, scissors, haven't we, Mr. Babington? Everyone knows this is the best way to decide anything. Not sure why politicians don't use it more often. I actually won my brother's new bike off him after I convinced him to have a go at best of 3. That's the thing with rock, paper, scissors. Never go to a best of 3 if you won the first go. Ever. Quit while you're ahead. He didn't give me the bike. He was very angry. But let's get back to the point. Rock, paper, scissors is a very complex thought process for our brains because of the mental backflips we do when trying to anticipate our opponent's next move. The more you play it, the more your brain becomes fine-tuned to the movements of the other person. You know, like that wild hand movement your mum makes when she's decided to go scissors. And then, if you can convince someone to go to best of 3, you actually start weighing up probabilities in your head. Is your dad really going to go rock 3 times straight in a row? So, who said you can't do maths? Number 3, recognising patterns. Why do we look both ways before we cross the road? How do you know to run into the space on a football pitch where your friend can pass to you unmarked? Because you've seen these patterns before. You've learnt to assess the risks, the benefits of staying on the pavement for a few extra seconds, the likelihood that he'll strike the ball properly for once and not hoof it off the pitch like an over-enthusiastic horse. Warning, sometimes our pattern recognition is a bit too good though. That's why people sometimes think they see the face of Jesus in a piece of burnt toast. Or look at a cloud and think it looks exactly like Taylor Swift's latest haircut. I always see dragons in clouds. What do you see? So we're already brilliant at loads of complex things. We are, in all honesty, already totally awesome. We just need to apply this awesomeness to stuff you'd like to get good at. You've clearly got the skills, now you need the practice. But not all practice is equal. Bad news alert! Not all practice is as useful as growing your brain and creating neural connections. There are different types of practice, and some are much more effective than others. Yes, I know this is a bit of a blow. How on earth are we supposed to know what to focus on? Time is precious. We don't want to be wasting it on something that's totally pointless. So let's have a look at what this means. Ask yourself this simple question. Can you ride a bike? So, can you ride a bike? No. Practicing is hard. You're learning a new skill and adapting your brain. Can you ride a bike now? No. Keep going. You'll get there. Practicing is hard. You're learning a new skill and adapting your brain. Can you ride a bike now? Yes. So try something new. Or you could start here. Can you ride a bike? Yes. Riding round your friend's back garden is not going to create any new pathways. Do you want to be able to do wheelies? No. Take up stamp collecting. It's less risky. Do you want to be able to do wheelies? Yes. It's going to be hard. You're going to have to do some tricky practice that's going to train your brain. I hope you've got the picture. The practice that really works, that builds those strong and lasting neural connections, is practice that challenges you. The hard stuff, the stuff that might make your eyes water, your muscle ache, and your brain hurt. The screw your face up, grit your teeth kind of practice that makes you feel good about yourself afterwards because you know you've achieved something. No one gets good at stuff by practicing the things they can already do. Can you walk? The answer is probably yes. Now that you can do it easily, you don't get any better the more you practice walking. You can see where I'm going with this, can't you? It's all too easy to revise for an exam lying on the sofa, one eye on social media, one eye on the page of French words you're supposed to be learning. That isn't hard practice. Getting up, putting your French words away and reciting them several times to your gran, that would be hard practice. You'd make some mistakes, but guess what? You'd also be creating neural pathways in your French vocab learning and would be more likely to remember the words next time. Awesome people get good at stuff by doing the type of practice that challenges them. It's a secret to their success, But we're not just talking about people who've become world famous in their chosen field. Here's how you can practice effectively. Number 1, sport. Practice with people better than you. And sad fact, there's always someone better than you, unless of course you're already world number 1. Practice the hard shots, the tricky passes. Use your other foot, assuming it's football, obviously. That advice is less useful in swimming, or use both feet if you're swimming. Number 2, presentations to your class. You've been doing these, haven't you? Recite the presentation in the mirror, then say it to your cat, then say it to your sister. It might be daunting. She, your cat or your sister, might laugh, but it will make it easier when you have to stand up in front of the class. Teachers do that lots, you know. Number 3, maths. Go on, do the questions you find difficult, not the ones you can already do. And when you get stuck, don't be afraid to ask for help. Number 4, learning a language. Speak it, don't be shy. Speak in public to your friends or teachers who can give you feedback and tell you where you're making mistakes. Number 5, revising for exams. You don't do too much of this just yet. Don't sit there looking blankly at your revision notes, convincing yourself that stuff is going in. Do questions from previous test papers and time yourself to get used to working in test-like conditions. Remember my brother, the super competitive one? The one who still owes me a brand new BMX? He was older and better than me at table tennis. He gave me the stretching practice I needed in the garage. He was faster than me, stronger than me, better than me. If you meet him, don't tell him I said that though. It'll go to his head. Later on in my career, I moved all over Europe to get practice partners that were better than me. It was hard. I needed to practice against opponents who could send me shots I couldn't return at first, so I'd be ready, relaxed even, when those shots came at me in the Olympics. No offence, but I wouldn't have got very far playing, for example, your dad for practice. Unless, of course, your dad is called Zhang Jike or Ma Lin. He's probably not Olympic standard, and so not a difficult enough opponent. Practicing with him would be the table tennis equivalent of walking around my own bedroom. The secret of practice. Check out these talents that uncover the practice secret and demonstrate how effective practice really boosts your performance. Lionel Messi. This international soccer star played a sport called futsal when he was young. Futsal is a version of football played 5-a-side on a tiny pitch. It's really hard. You have to be extremely fast and it hones deft ball skills because the pitch is so small. When it comes to playing on a full-size pitch, the game feels slower. It meant for someone like Messi, who'd learnt to play an accelerated version of the game, football on a full-size pitch became easier to read and master. Benjamin Franklin. One of the founding fathers of America, a leading politician, author and scientist. His father told him when he was a child that he was not good enough at writing, so to improve he acquired and read the works of all the great writers of his time. He would then try and reconstruct the entire piece of writing again from memory, and then compare what he had written with the original so he could see all of his mistakes. He even translated the articles into rhyme sometimes to improve his language. All highly competent people continually search for ways to keep learning, growing and improving. Great Britain's women's hockey team. In the run-up to the 2016 Olympics, this team of super determined women had something called Thinking Thursdays. They still trained hard on all the other days of the week too, but on Thursdays they really went for it. They were exhausted. At the end of their Thursday session, their coach would ask them to solve problems and think about tactical issues they might face in the next match. Getting used to tackling tricky issues as a state of tiredness made it much easier to think fast when the pressure was on in a grueling match situation. You can read about the result on page 124. Simone Biles, this American gymnast, decided that Simone Biles. This American gymnast dedicated her life to training and practicing from an early age. She became interested in the sport at the age of 6 and started working with her first trainer at 8 years old. By the time she was 18, Simone had won so many medals that when she travelled to Rio for the 2016 Olympics, everyone expected her to win gold. And she did, 4 times over. I always enjoy this one. Just to reinforce the power of practice and perseverance, here's another example of a famous failure. Did you know about this? J.K. Rowling, the best-selling author, multimillionaire and philanthropist, the creator of Harry Potter, probably the most successful book series of all time, that J.K. Rowling, right? Rowling was only 32 when the first Harry Potter book was published, and the titles that followed propelled her to stardom. The world she created has inspired films, plays, and even a theme park. And she has gone on to write best-selling novels for adults too, which are very, very good. So far, I'm not seeing any evidence of failure, but Rowling wrote her first novel in a coffee shop with her baby daughter asleep in the pram next to her. She was unemployed and broke. There was no hint of the fame and fortune to come. And even after she'd finished the book, 12 publishers rejected her manuscript. 12 turned down Harry Potter. J.K. Rowling didn't give up though. She believed in her work, and when it seemed that nobody else shared her vision, finally a small offer from an editor who could see something magical in the story saw her determination pay off. And the rest is history. And this is what J.K. Rowling said. Failure taught me things about myself that I could have learned no other way. I discovered that I had a strong will and more discipline than I had suspected. Well done if you've listened to this whole chunk in one go, because it was quite a long one. We will leave it there, and I'll see you again tomorrow for the next instalment.